everybody. I want to cry because things keep coming up and I am so far behind schedule. So, what I'm either going to have to do is continue to go over everything and keep on pushing content out very slowly, or I'm just going to have to shove a whole bunch of things together and go quick, 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 quick. And if you know me by now, I'm probably just going to take my sweet time. Because even though I'm behind schedule, because of meetings and lectures and things like that that I do a good given, um, you can't change the core aspects of somebody. Take my sweet time. So here we are on the creations forum. We have a decent amount of concepts added, some comments, some things like that. And what I was hoping didn't happen is everything got pushed back to a previous thing. I might save this one for Monday. Yeah, today's Saturday, which generally I wouldn't record at all, but since everything's been cut so short, you gotta kind of backlog it. So, here we are. Hellsing concept. This is the third time I've seen something like this. The new killer is the Immortal. Oh, they're using Alucard, huh? Am I wrong, but wasn't Alucard the one with the blonde hair, or silverish blonde looking hair? I guess it's technically silver, but I don't know. Looks like Dracula. Anyway, excuse me. Weapon. His hand, because unfortunately his pistols don't work here. I mean, they can. Power. Release restraint level 1. You should really use the actual buttons and not go by a specific set of controls like mouse 2. So already I would go back through and update this just to make it universal. When power button is held down, the Immortal's gloves will glow red and a dark aura will surround him, and after 0.5 seconds, Baskerville the black dog will appear from the aura. After appearing, Baskerville can be launched forward 16 meters by clicking the attack button, basic attack button, going over short walls and windows. If Baskerville hits a wall, the Immortal will be locked in animation for 1 second as Baskerville recovers. When was this? 3:01 a.m. I know by this time you've read something on the new killer that has come out. So, one, she just came out, so I'm not going to name anything an alternative killer for her. She is her own base entity and she hasn't even been released yet. So, this power level 1, I would get rid of. There's already an entire killer based on the same mechanic. So I would get rid of it and make it something different. Release restraint level 0. The immortal will be able to summon a troop on horseback for 4 meters of himself by clicking Control. I'm assuming that's the secondary action button. Release restraint level 0 has 3 charges. 1 charge is replenished every 45 seconds. This troop will chase any survivor that enters their line of sight within 18 meters until the survivor leaves a 24-meter radius where the troop is summoned. The troop runs at 125% speed, so faster than the survivors. When it hits a survivor, it will inflict deep wounds but cannot down a survivor. The troop will disappear after 20 seconds when it hits a survivor or when it's stunned by pallet. Killers move at what? 115%. Then you go down to a troop that you summon that does 125% speed. Also, you need to explain how do you go from restraint level 1 to restraint level 0. You're not explaining how this restraint system that you're trying to incorporate into your killer works. And if you're going to have any type of tiered system or anything like that, you have to explain how all of this works. Or somebody trying to encode this or trying to add this to something, we're just going to be like, okay, well, where do I start? There's a lot of information, but I don't know how to put the information together. And generally, that's where you get mistakes between creators, because they're just going to randomly throw everything you say into something and call it a day. 2, this is the same as this, except for this just has auto-targeting. 2, it's the same thing as the artist, that killer. You are essentially just taking the idea that the artist has by base and are breaking it down into tiers. Both of these don't need to be included in this. But let's see what the last thing is. Tertiary power. Earthbound coffin. Some liberties were taken here. A coffin spawns randomly on the map. The immortal can see the aura of the coffin, and when close enough to it, can interact with it with control. Secondary action button, I'm gonna assume. This will have the immortal open the coffin and go into it. He will then be able to teleport to any one of the troops summoned by release restraint level 0. Removing the troop in the process. This has a cooldown of 30 seconds, during which time the coffin disappears. It will reappear in a random spot once the cooldown is completed. So the coffin only affects this. And the problem that I'm having is the troop disappears after 20 seconds. So what kind of use are you trying to get from this? You would sit a troop down and a generator. No, I know what this is used for. It's not used for generator training, it's used for camping. Because it wouldn't make sense to walk over to a generator, kick it if somebody's nearby, then place a troop on top of it, and then run immediately to a coffin and teleport back. That's a waste of so much time. And it isn't necessary. Once you kick the gen, you should be going to other gens. You shouldn't be just hitting or placing a coffin down and then walking away, or placing a troop down, walking away, and then teleporting back. That makes no sense. It's a waste of time, and by the time you do all of that, they've already completed multiple gens. So, the problem I have with this power is you only have 20 seconds to enact on it. And the only thing that I can see this being used for is either in-game, you know, you put it on an exit door or something like that, you go after the last gen. If they manage to complete the gen, you can then use your troop to either inflict the deep wound status effect or teleport over to an exit door. Or you put the exit door down, you go over to the other exit where you can see that nobody's there, you teleport back over. So either a camping switch or a camping hook. You hook somebody, you put a troop down in the general area because they won't let you place one right next to hook. But near hook, and as somebody's going for an unhook, you then teleport all the way back over so you can get the Devourer of Hope token and then teleport right near and continue chase to either go after the other person or a tunnel or whatever. It's a quick way to build up Devourer of Hope. Speaking of that, off of another note, the new killer that has the ability to, when you hook somebody, it pops gens and things like that, and the ghost face strategies and things I thought like that. All of that would be good on Freddy, who can teleport between gens. Everything would be very good for Freddy. But back onto this. Because these are just a rendition of the new killer's moves, I would change that, and because this is reliant upon that, I would also get rid of this. So as of right now, I would either store this for future use, and I mean, like, it's gonna be like a future OS or use, so you could probably just go ahead and just design something else if you want to get a speed run or a faster implementation or review or anything like that. But yeah, this is basically the new killer, which, I mean, you can see took inspiration from them, and then gave the new killer a teleport. And that's about the end of it. The add-ons, all of that, nice. Let's see, perks, Scourge Hook. There you go. So yeah. At the start of the trial, 4 random hooks, yada yada yada, Scourge Hook stuff. Each time a survivor is hooked on a Scourge Hook, all injured survivors are broken for 60 seconds. I would not make injured survivors broken for all of 60 seconds. And this is why. Each phase lasts 60 seconds. If a survivor wants to heal during that time, that means that this person, or if the survivor is injured and wants to go for a save or something like that, it's going to take survivors anywhere from 30 to upwards of, to a lowards of, like, what, with all stack perks and things like that, like 6 or 7 seconds. But let's go 8, because Circle of Healing is a thing. So you can get 8 seconds to heal if somebody has Circle of Healing and you have a med kit, yada yada. Or 32 seconds if you're using self care. There's also perks in between that take like 10 to 15 seconds. Things along that nature. But this broken status effect lasts the entirety of the 60 seconds. And that's where the issues come in, which means if there's an injured survivor, or if all survivors are injured in that case, and somebody gets hooked, all survivors are now broken for 60 seconds, or anytime somebody gets hooked, there's a broken status effect. During hang time is where survivors are most efficient, or should be most efficient. After the survivor's up, you want to use that hang time to essentially get everything done before you actually go for the unhook. Making the broken status effect happen for 60 seconds, there's only one thing left but for somebody to just go for the unhook. And if anybody's injured, it goes for it, which most people who are injured generally don't unless they're a low level. Low levels will just straight up run up to them and go for the unhook, even without borrowed time or any type of thing to cover themselves, and then they'll just trade. And that's what you're essentially making people do, is trade. And since you have the ability to set something that automatically targets that you can teleport to, that's a very big no-no. I would definitely decrease the amount of seconds. Like, I like the perk, and I think it's very unique as to what's available. I mean, there might be another perk like it. I still have yet to this day to go over all of the other new perks since PTB, so that's on the docket too. But breaking survivors for 60 seconds, that's an entire phase of being on the hook, or entire hook state. So decrease that to, like, I don't know, maybe 20 seconds. It gives you a 20-second head start on the hook state where survivors won't approach if they're smart. I mean, there are some that will be at full health, and there are some that will immediately just run towards the hook as soon as somebody's hooked instead of using that hang time and go down. And it'll generally be within 20 to 30 seconds. So anywhere between 20 and 30 seconds, essentially half everything here. And it'll be a little bit more balanced. From there, it'll have to be balanced through a public test beta to see, to get that actual 100% balance. At the start of a trial, 4 random hooks, Scourge hooks meta. This perk gains 1 token for each survivor, each unique survivor hooked on a Scourge hook. First hook, auras of survivors within 8 meters of a hook are shown to you. That's already a perk. 2, blood trails are 100% brighter. All injured survivors are inflicted with hemorrhaging. That's already a perk but buffed. 3, injured survivors vault pallets and windows 40% slower. That's actually technically a status effect. And 4, injured survivors are incapacitated. And, well, that's also a status effect. Why not make this a hex perk for 1? Because as the way it sits now, these are effects that you're always going to have. As long as you hook every individual survivor one time. Any survivor that goes for any type of unhook or runs by a hook, which 8 meters, which are, by generators and things like that, you're going to know where they're at. There's going to be some cases where survivor auras are always going to be revealed to you. Just them moving throughout the map, they're going to come within radius of a lot of hooks and things like that. But as I stated before, there's already a perk that pseudo does that. Blood trails are 100% brighter, and you also make them bleed more. What is it? Bloodhound, I think, makes blood trails easier to be seen. Third token, injured survivors vault pallets, windows 40% slower, and also the incapacitated effect. You are always going to have that particular effect going. So, and it won't even necessarily be slower. It's just always going to end up being a slow vault, essentially. Possibly a medium vault. I don't want to do the math to see if it'll always be a slow vault or medium vault. And then injured survivors are incapacitated. So essentially, anytime you hit a survivor, they're not going to be able to escape you. Is where we're coming from here. And since there's no way to actually deactivate it, aka being a Scourge hook perk and not a hex perk, there's no counter for it, making it way, way, way too overpowered. And then on the second thing that I've kind of brushed up against a little bit is it's just a collection of perks, random perks from the game and random status effects from the game. And it's not in good practice to take different things and just jam them all together into one perk. Also, I didn't go over that, but the incapacitated status effects keeps you from being able to interact with certain objects. I should probably have said that, so nobody has to actually go out of their way and look things up. But yeah, the incapacitated status effect keeps you from interacting with certain objects. So keep that in mind, that when you're incapacitated, you still can't interact with anything, essentially. You're going to be injured. You're not going to be able to vault pallets or windows with any type of speed. The blood trail that you leave is going to be brighter, but essentially like a bloodhound. And if you go near any hooks, you're basically going to be targeted. So this severely cuts down the ability for survivors to actually be able to do anything. Excuse me. Alright. So, and then for whatever reason, you make the upgrade for that, being able to max tokens at 2, 3, and 4. That don't make any sense. Upgrading the max of a token perk, you should be able to achieve that from start, not having to upgrade it on the blood web. That's just weird. To my knowledge, there aren't any other token perks that do that, and if they do, then why? So I'm gonna go over this one more time. Why this perk needs to be one, a hex, and then two, it needs to be reworked to do other things. One, the auras of injured survivors within 8 meters of a hook are shown to you. So all of these target injured survivors. For one, when you're injured, you are the most vulnerable. When you're injured, you are the most vulnerable, and if you are recently injured, you are probably in chase. And as soon as you get injured and everybody else has been hooked during the match, it's a downhill match for you, or matter for you, or a match for you. Because anytime you go near any type of hook, whether you know it's there or not, or if it's by a generator, or you have to pass by the hook to get to the generator, the killer's going to tag you and know exactly where you are. Two, everywhere you go, they're going to be able to follow your blood trails. Even if you escape from chase, they're going to be able to follow your blood trail. And not only that, you're bleeding even more. So even if you are a master looper and things like that and get away from them, they can just immediately get back. That, coupled with the ability to summon things to patrol areas, they can also do the same thing that the artist does, and they can completely stop loops, things like that. And that's the second survivor, unique survivor, that gets hooked. Now it's almost essentially an infinite chase ability, and they have the ability to essentially break loops to where you can't do anything. And if you do come in, you're going to get hit. It's not even something that they activate their own. It automatically activates and gives you the deep wound status effect. So now, if you go near a hook, your aura is going to be revealed and your blood trails brighter and things like that. And that's if you're the third survivor. Fourth survivor has to go up with not being able to go near hooks. As soon as they're injured, the trails are going to be shown. They're going to bleed more. And they're going to have to put up with the injured survivors aren't going to be able to, or you aren't going to be able to vault pallets and windows without essentially taking a hit. And if you get yourself into a situation where you're trying to run a loop that involves you going back and forth through a particular window, you're definitely going to get grabbed during one of those. So you essentially can't even complete a full loop. That's probably going to be cut off anyway by the killer's power. And then once all four are hooked, any survivors that are injured from this point forward, I know that incapacitated, one, allows you to not be able to repair generators. And I know that it, too, doesn't let you use items. And then I know that you can't heal other survivors. So you're stuck healing yourself. So if anybody here isn't running a med kit or any type of self-care or boon circle of healing or anything like that, you can essentially soft lock survivors into infinite injured state. And not even being broken. They just won't be able to heal if no survivors in this particular area is not running anything. I don't think you can... I know you can still interact with chests while incapacitated. They took that out of the clause so you can have the ability to get items while you aren't able to do very much. But yeah, it's way too OP. It's also a mix of multiple perks. Yeah. This good perk sounds good. This needs to just be decreased, especially for an effect that you're going to get every time on every hook. So if you're hooking a survivor and you get that time, by the time you down another survivor, this timer will be just now expiring, and you'll be able to hook another survivor, breaking them again for another minute. It may not seem like much, but if you think about playing against a plague where you essentially stay broken all match. Now imagine that on a fast killer like Legion, or a stealth killer or something like that, or even a Bubba in some cases, to not being able to heal, where a Bubba can just chainsaw you down. Once he hooks you, everybody's broken, and then next thing you know, you just walk over and start mouse warning, and you don't even have to chainsaw anymore. It defeats the purpose after the first go round, but I mean, it makes it extremely easy if survivors can't heal. And you're a faster killer, even though Bubba's technically faster while he's running his chainsaw if you're running cords, but that's another discussion. So injured survivors are broken. Injured survivors are all of these tokens. Then Soul Eater. While this hex remains standing, if a survivor blesses a totem, that survivor has their aura revealed for 10 seconds. Survivors with the radius of a boon totem will have all action speeds reduced by 20%. When this totem is cleansed, all totems are blocked by the entity for 60 seconds. I mean, do I need to explain why this is a no? If a survivor blesses a totem, which in some cases is the only way you're going to be able to heal because of all of this other extra crap, plus perks on top of it, you're going to have your aura revealed for 10 seconds. So the survivor that blesses the totem essentially isn't even going to be able to heal or even use said totem. Then any survivor within the range of a boon totem, a boon being a positive effect or ability bestowed upon you by something, a boon, almost like an accolade, something like that, now is no longer a boon totem because all of the action speeds are reduced by 20%. Why should you have the ability to affect something that a survivor brings in and adds onto something? That is the survivor's spell. Leave it alone. You can break it or snuff it out already. You don't need to be able to go in and change the effects that the boon totem does. It makes no sense of that. Then, when this particular totem is cleansed, you want to make all dual totems blocked by the entity for 60 seconds on top of that. So if they do find your Hex Soul Eater and you're running that and Hex Undyne, you could essentially get a double trigger of that in 2 minutes of totems not being used. This seems like this was added in just so you had a tailored perk to use with the artist. Which, I mean, most of these. Looks like you just wanted your own. You don't like how the artist is set, and you're like, screw it, I'm going to design a character that I think is essentially the artist. However, I want to design it the way I wanted the artist to be designed. Because you should have just named this artist rework and just went off of her crow idea and called it a day. Yes, please, I love hellsing. The thing is, this isn't very hellsing-esque. It isn't per... I mean, I guess it's per theme. to an extent, but it's not really following off of Hellsing. This is just the artist, but trying to be or tried to be converted to the Hellsing concept. So I mean, I can't give it any type of alternative killer title or anything like that. It's a decent concept, but get away from the crow and bring in the hellsing. If you want to go hellsing, go all the way hellsing. Wrong video. I want to go forward. It's a Dead by Daylight video, though, that demonstrated heal speeds. Essentially, circle of healing, medkit, 8-second heal after being chased. That's what that video was. Just in case you're like, oh, I'm gonna look it up and expose you. Like, no, I'll just explain what it was. I don't want to show somebody else's content while on stream for obvious reasons, though. At least not an entire video of somebody's. Naya in high fashion. Thank you. That's exactly what I was gonna say. Almost word for word. I hate this with every fiber of my being. Why does Naya look so just absolutely just disgusting here? And then put into a slightly fashionable outfit with dyed hair. You should have used her actual smooth, fair skin, not the dirty survivor skin that this is. She even got painted nails. This is like a meme fashion dress. I'm not gonna lie. It's literally a meme fashion dress. Anytime you think about fashion or anybody's memeing about it, they always show some abstract dress like this. Yeah, that's just your standard spandex. And then the dyed hair. It's very... I want to get rid of the news. Terror and slight displeasure. Yes. Yes. If Neo ever was to be a killer, or Nia for some of you, that's definitely what she would look like. Slender Man. Another Slender Man, or is this the same guy that originally did the Slender Man? Redone, updated version of Slender Man discussion. I have changed grammar, most of the wording is changed, added information, art, made things make more sense, and still trying to be more persuasive. Not a chapter concept, but a history of Slender Man and more. Okay. Also, not feedback or suggestions, since I am just explaining why it's perfect while explaining what he is. Well, that's all the more reason to have more feedback. Feedback and criticism are two different things. I don't know why everybody considers feedback to be just absolutely, the deadliest things, and they're afraid of it. Like, you shouldn't be afraid of any type of positive or negative feedback. Then you said feedback or suggestion. So you don't want anybody, like, why did you post this concept onto the Dead by Daylight creation forum if you didn't want anybody to say anything about it? It don't make sense. I could go to Wikipedia or Wikipedia and then look up Slender Man and get all of this information and make any type of assessments or guesses or anything like that myself. No feedback or suggestions because I'm just explaining why he's perfect for Dead by Daylight while explaining what he is. Kinda makes me not want to read it, but since I'm on stream, I can't just click out. I have to go through. I'm not gonna go through all of this though. We're gonna stick to the nitty gritty. Everybody knows who Slenderman is. That's a photo of him. He's got his tentacles out here. Slenderman, fan made 2012. 8 pages. I thought it was 7. Maybe it is 8. Slender arrival. Slenderman can walk, although he rarely does. Which, I mean, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this the first Slenderman concept that I went over. Tentacles, things like that. And tons of different media. He has multiple powers. However, I'm gonna stick with video game powers and other media that referenced it. So here are the powers devs can choose from. No. Absolutely not. You already seem stuck up by nature, but now you're going to demand that the devs choose from a set of powers to implement into the game. No. Absolutely not. As soon as you hit this, no dev's gonna read any farther into your concept. And it's probably why you said that you didn't want any type of feedback. You are completely closed off, and you think that your concept is for the most part complete and foolproof. And if anybody says anything else, you're going to be insulted. The same guy, another guy that I think the judge concept I did on, had the same attitude. Except he openly asked for feedback and then completely got mad when I gave him feedback. Never, ever, ever tell a game developer what they can choose from or what to do in their game when you are trying to pitch a concept to them. Now, if you're sitting in a meeting room with them and you're giving a PowerPoint presentation and things like that, you can say, well, these are some of the powers that you guys can choose from and make it a little lighter sentences. But you would never say anything. So here are the many powers the devs can choose from. It is a definite statement. It's definitive. It basically says that you are going to choose one of these statements. As soon as something like that, or I mean, generally, as soon as somebody sees something like this, developer-wise, they're just gonna move on anyway. Because if they do incorporate your idea into their game, and they change whatever, you're just gonna come back on top and say, well, they didn't really use my particular plans or my particular designs, and you're gonna go off and basically badmouth, even though you are one of the rare people that got a full concept into the game. Statements and things like this show that that person doesn't respect other people. They see themselves as higher in the particular thing that they're doing. He feels as though he's put the time, because he put time into this, that everything is correct. But what he don't realize is Dead by Daylight's been out for 5 years. Other games have been out for long amounts of times, and they're still continuously updating and fixing their games. Things don't just pop out perfect. Things don't just, you work on them for a little bit of time and you implement them. I mean, look at Cyberpunk. I think it's 2077 or something. How it flopped when it first came out, and they put a lot of time into it, and they spent a lot of time fixing it. That's something a lot of people are looking towards. So, yeah. I'm going to continue to go over this, even though I should just abandon this now and never give this the light of day. But I can tell effort's been put into it, so I'm just going to kind of grit my teeth and bear it. This concept will probably never be included in, or incorporated into the game. Even if Splinter Man comes in, you're not going to see anything like this, unfortunately, because of how this is wrote. You can't write with an attitude. Beggars can't be choosers. You gotta stay humble. You gotta stay open to suggestions and feedback. Or just don't post anything at all. And the internet trolls, because he said not to post any feedback, they're gonna come in and probably start posting all kinds of crap. But this forum is pretty respectful, so as long as it stays creator, and none of you guys that come across this video are toxic, everything should stay hunky-dory. So the powers you can choose from is teleportation. You can teleport near the victim rather than walking. Well, yeah, because Slender Man by nature rarely walks. Going to be pretty creepy with how he walks, even though you rarely see him walk. And there you go. In Dead by Daylight, you would think that either he would teleport to set locations that were marked at the start of the match or phase there in a spirit-like form. Well, one of the unique things of Splinter, I was going to say Splinter Cell, Slenderman, is that it seems like he teleports from position to position. So they're just going to have to basically update his asset's location as you're walking around. To make it seem like you're teleporting, but in essence the actual killer's just going to be walking regularly. Or they might make him walk and just give him some sort of pseudo teleportability, who knows. Shadow tentacles. In Arrival, it is known that he has shadow-like tentacles. It's not even in Arrival, it's Slender Man in basically every form that you see, or in every game and thing that you see him in. His tentacles pop out. But he rarely uses them in Arrival. In other media forms references, he can pick up and destroy stuff with them. I consider this a fact since they give him more lethality in Dead by Daylight if he were to use this ability. But what are you going to make the tentacles do in Dead by Daylight? I'm going to hope in the future you explain this. Nope, there's lore, there's background, there's fun facts, why he should be there, how Slender Man would act. Okay, so he does define this later on. Parentheses. Define later in X section. Parentheses. Static/technology malfunctions in every game. If you get too close, you will cause your screen to become static. That is what Slender Man does. This is because you are not using the player's eyes, but you are using a camera view. Based on this, he may interfere with technology, so he would most likely affect generators, flashlights, but not stuff like toolboxes and medkits. I mean, like every other horror game, if you're running a flashlight and you're running through the woods looking for the pages, the flashlights do go out intermittently and can't be used. That's simple. Just make the flashlight unusable for X amount of time, which could also be a secondary power of his. He clicks a button and flashlights can't be used and generator speeds maybe slow down for X amount of time or something. I don't know. spitballing here. I haven't gave this serious thought. Illusion slash sanity breaks and arrival. You see changes in things such as the writings that were not there before. Slender, warning the player about him. Also, it's known that Kate, in game, is a proxy of Slender Man, which most likely means he drove her into insanity with illusions like the Doctor and Dead by Daylight. Okay. Stealth. In the games, it is shown that he can be quite stealthy while stalking until he chases down the victim. I mean, Slender Man's never had any type of tear radius, so that makes sense. It's just a as he gets closer to you type of thing. The 8 pages. After the 8 pages games, it seems now it's connected to the 8 pages in a way. It's unknown who placed the pages and why Slenderman does not want anyone to have them, but one thing is known, that he becomes more aggressive as each page is taken. For doing research, you should actually know the answer to this particular statement that you're saying. It's the person who actually makes the pages and all of that. Well, I guess he doesn't really go over the lore and he's sticking to a particular game, so I'm going to keep my opinions to myself since he's basing it all off of Slenderman Arrival. But if he done any research, there's a reason why there are pages placed about and why he gets mad when they are taken. And that's what he looks like in Arrival. The looks, the tentacles, things like that. There's notes, things like this. Flashlight. Things here. This is also one of the things I'm surprised he didn't go over. This is one of the things that Slender Man is made for. And since he has this picture, he should know the answer to that question. Personality lore. I mean, he's basically a stalker that takes you. Background. Probably pulled right from the Wikipedia, but I ain't really wanting to jump into that. Phew, I'm a tough guy. Phew. Fun facts. Not worried about it. Why he should be in Dead by Daylight. Let's get to the nitty gritty. This is why Slender Man should be in Dead by Daylight. Dead by Daylight can make great use of Slender Man based on his internet horror fame. Well, I mean, fame is the reason why most killers are in Dead by Daylight. Big horror icon. There's no actual way to win against Slender Man based on his popular games. Even if you win the game, you can never escape Slender Man. Isn't that a reason actually not to incorporate him into the game? Because nobody ever escapes him. And that in turn would technically be breaking the lore if people were actually able to escape him. That's not a good reason why he should be in Dead by Daylight. That's a reason why they should never add him. Because you can't escape him. Even if you do collect said pages or things like that. And that's another thing is Slender Man is based upon pages, while Dead by Daylight's based upon generators. So they're going to have to add some sort of page to the generator. So essentially, as soon as the generator is complete, a page is going to be able to be obtained. And the more pages they grab, the more power that you would have as Slenderman. Or they would have to incorporate it in something like that. Speaking of something like that, Bird Lady. I wish they would take the artist and they would make an exclusive hide and seek mode involving her. Not only would it be unique and completely turn everything on its head, it would be fun for players to be able to play essentially hide and seek with the killer. Not having to worry about generators or anything like that, and it would be a popular mode for a short time. You go in, you hide, things happen. The killer, which is the artist, can run around, do whatever. You can hop in lockers, but you can't stay in a locker longer than X time. Your character will immediately get back out. Things like that, and just let her or allow her to use her killer power to locate people. During one of the games, on the footage that I recorded that was just green with just audio for whatever reason, we played hide and seek with the artist in the match, and it was extremely fun. And I would love, love, love to do that again. It was the funnest experience we had in our lives, and we literally were just hiding from her. And she still found us rather quickly. You would think the match would last in upwards of an hour, but no. I mean, I guess it did last like 45 minutes, but we were all messing around with her perks and things like that beforehand before we actually started playing the hide and seek version. Very fun. Anyway, back to this. Again, nobody ever escapes the Slender Man. So that's actually a negative reason to add him in a Dead by Daylight. Second negative reason is, well, he only cares about the pages. That's it. Slenderman has no true backstory, so they're basically going to have to go off the wiki or make up just some random story about him. So devs can make him link to the entity like how Ghostface is. I never read Ghostface's bio, but those of you that know Ghostface know that there is a reason behind every single Ghostface. And by the way the powers are set up and the add-on, or yeah, the powers and add-ons and things like that, specifically the add-ons being video cameras and things, I'd assume the Ghostface here is based off of Scream 4. But if they're using him as an all-together, then he's just the, whatever the name of that town it is, style slasher. Ghostface has a lot of backstories, because Ghostface is generally two different killers over the course of 4 movies, so essentially 8 killers. When there's double killers. I think one was only one. It was the mother. I don't remember. Oh yeah, she had a partner. Never mind. Yeah, 8. There was 8. This brings general fear into Slenderman, which makes him quite terrifying to players. Even if you win the game, you can never escape Slenderman. So it essentially the same as the entity, even though you escape the entity, or you escape the trial, you can't ever escape the entity. So in that case, wouldn't Slenderman and the entity both collide? Because Slenderman never lets anybody escape. He takes them and does what he wants to with them. Or essentially, I guess he'd kill them and then they would go to the entity anyway. Every time. And then the entity would send more people into his territory, which he hates, and he would just be literally just slaughtering people for taking his notes. Um, Slender Man would be the first urban legend killer in Dead by Daylight. Depends on what you mean by first urban legend killer. Because, I mean, most killers are loosely based on realistic events. Some are concepts thought out of the open, or just like bam, bam, bam. But most are based upon something, some sort of urban legend or something of that sort. So, I mean, I guess I understand what you're going for, but that's not necessarily a true statement. He would be the first killer that was thought up, designed. Well, no, because he was based off of something too. And you can't say Slender Man wasn't is the first one that went from a movie, because he has movies and games and everything else too, like the rest of them. The Boogeyman, the Hag. It's technically an urban legend too, even though she has a backstory per game. Hags are urban legends. Things like that. I don't know. I'm not gonna dawdle on that for too long. The look dash C is highly likely based on Slenderman, so why not add the original as a killer? The what? Look dash C is highly based on Slenderman. What do you mean by look dash C? You talking about like ghost faces? If somebody looks at you, you have that instinctual feeling, and then eventually when they expose you, you get that killer instinct of their location. Is that what you're talking about? I have no idea what look dash C is. Slenderman was the very first horror icon that had everything about him written by random people filling in major gaps of his story, based on two black and white photos that was for a contest. Notice how you had to keep extending this sentence out to make this statement true. The based on two black and white photos that was for a contest is what makes this statement true. None of this in this top line is true. Just this bottom. And I guarantee you I could find something that probably counteracts that, but I'm not going to. So let's say that just this bottom statement, yeah. Yeah, it says based on two black and white photos for a contest, so it'd have to be exactly two. So this is a very, very long and drawn out sentence to say this one fact. It's grasping for straws. Currently, he is owned by Mythology Entertainment, which Sony came to them to make that movie. At least there is a company they can go to get the license to have him in game. Yeah, but at what cost? Is there any information that shows how much money Sony paid to get that license? Or did Sony themselves just buy the license from them? Like, how did the whole transaction work? You need to explain this. You need to further define what you're talking about here. Currently owned by Mythology Entertainment when Sony came to them to make the movie, which If I remember correctly, wasn't there a lot of issues on them actually getting the licensing for that? How much did some. I don't know how much it cost. Yeah. After acquiring rights to a creepypasta internet meme Slenderman, Sony filed a lawsuit. So there you go. After acquiring rights to the creepypasta meme, Sony attempted to warn another filmmaker against infringing upon that. Now myth and reality will be explored in Texas. And there was this huge thing about Slenderman. Who owns rights to Slenderman? Bum, 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 bum. Sold to a production company. It's in 2016. The media rights of Slenderman was sold to Mythology Entertainment, but the company split up in 2019, leaving the ownership of character rights in question. But the thing is, Sony, which I mean, you can't believe everything that's on the internet, because I remember Sony and all of them having a discussion. Mythology Entertainment does not own the rights to Slenderman anymore. Sony's got the rights on that. Now they got motion picture rights. So what would that fall under when it comes to making a game? Whose rights would those fall under? I don't know. I'd assume that it'd fall on Sony since the company split up and the only one with rights on something would belong to Sony. So you could potentially have to go through Mythology Entertainment and Sony to get rights to Slenderman. Movie rights, but I mean, video games are basically animations. Animations are essentially movies. So I don't know if they own just a straight up digital license of Slenderman or if it's only just for making movie rights and things like that. No idea. At least there is a company they can go to get a license to have them in game. Company broke up. They would have to find whoever has rights to Slenderman because it's actually sent through to whoever. It's always when things are licensed. They are generally licensed to a company, but an extension is licensed to a particular individual of that company. Therefore, if the person who owns the actual rights to Slenderman decides, you guys ain't my jam, they can leave and then give Slenderman rights to another company and things of that nature. Is generally how these go as a self or fail safe. Now, companies themselves can own the rights to a particular character, the entirety of the entity of the company. Which in that case, then you're going to have to go through a board of directors or if the CEO has any absolute power, if it's not a huge, like company and it all goes to the CEO, then he'll be able to make the final decision on whether you get rights or not. It's all dependent upon company structure. So if there's one head guy that's on top of all of the decisions and things like that, then you go to that guy, you say, hey, can I do this? He says yes, and he signs the rights over, or at least gives you a contract to use them. If it's a board and they have to get multiple people together in a company that's already broken up, that's never going to happen. It's way too much work and too much money. 2008's or 18, a Slender movie did him wrong, and devs can do a lot better while maintaining source material. I mean, anytime you make a video of some sort of urban legend, as we call it, it's not going to be correct because urban legends change over time. regardless of regardless of what you know about a particular character, somebody else will tell you something different. It's just kind of what you've been told. Many of these are childhood nursery rhymes and things like that. Most nursery rhymes are very dark. Very dark and very jaded, and the characters die and bad things happen to them and things of that nature. But nowadays, most people either cut that out or they only tell the good story because that's what they've been taught. So, I mean, it's the same principle. There's another really big thing that I could state right now that's obviously changed over time, but I'm not going to. Plus, that's not something I want to get into on my channel. Many people thought a Slender Man coming to Dead by Daylight when certain leaks came out and showed major interest for Slender Man in an April Fool's joke video. If you fell for an April Fool's joke video, that's on you. You did a poll not too long ago to see how many people would actually like a Slender Man chapter and got quite a lot of votes. You did the poll in the Dead by Daylight forum, which is interesting why you didn't do it publicly, like over a YouTube channel, or even if you know like a famous YouTuber, or possibly send them an email or something and say, hey man, on your story, could you post this for me? Like getting a hold of like Not Oats, he'd probably do it for you. You asked him nice enough and they actually like went to a stream and donated him some money just to get his attention and say, hey, could you add this to one of your stories, or could you advertise this, or just run a poll real quick and get things from multiple different sources, multiple different YouTubers, things like that. I mean, you could go the free kind of scumbagish way and just go to YouTube videos of popular streamers and things and then be like, hey, would you guys like to see Ghostface? And then do it that way. But, I mean, all in all, it gives them more engagement and more comments on their videos, so it is still a positive. Unfortunately, when it's information gathering, you have quantitative and qualitative information. This, by how it sits by itself, unfortunately can't be included upon research. It's a good base to say that, you know, right off the bat that Slender Man's popular and all that, and people would like to see him, but this isn't conclusive to that you'd actually like to see him in the game. You only have one source that you've done votes and things on. Which I explain this daily because this also prevents people from falling falling into that pattern of you don't understand something, you do a quick Google search like I did earlier with the licensing and all of that, and then boom, getting an answer from the first thing that you see. Because there are a lot of things that you search for that you'll get an answer to that isn't generally 100% correct. Or there's multiple opinions on something. If I say, if I type in to Google, I don't know, best way to get pests out of garden, or best way to get flies out of garden, depending on what you click on or something like that, or if you're just going off the very top number one answer that's up there at the time, it's going to be completely different. Some people will tell you to use pesticides, some people will give you natural remedies and things like that. All answers may be correct, some answers may be wrong. Some people may tell you to use like peppers and things like that, but you know, there are some bugs that absolutely love peppers and it'll attract more of them. You generally will get the most popular answer as your answer on YouTube, not necessarily the most correct answer. And you have to watch on those. Because I just read through and it completely nullified this statement, which was updated, by the way. When was this updated? Today? It was edited on November 1st, and we're talking about 3 years ago that the company broke up. No, it was 2 years ago that the company broke up and licensing for that's thrown into the air. And that's something that they completely missed because they probably just did a search. Who owns Slenderman? Mythology? Cool. Mythology. They should go to them for whatever. And in turn, they ended up with an incorrect statement. Movie did him wrong, and devs can do a lot better while maintaining source material. Can they? Can they, though? When it comes to Slenderman, people are going to expect a certain kind of play and a certain kind of system for Slenderman to actually work with. And if it's anything subpar, they're going to get a lot of negative feedback because he's so popular. And then also another poll which was created by Hunters of Shadow here. It's the same form. You can't use the same form twice, guys. Still, stating they have multiple polls that they use, but they use the same polls on the same essential people or the same essential group twice. You need to get a source from the forum itself, which is great because this is where the creators are. You need to get something from general public, or where a majority of the public exists, like YouTube, things like that. Then you're going to need a third non-base source, just out in the internet in general, which you're probably not going to get much feedback on. You can do like Facebook or Twitter or something like that, as opposed to that. So then you have the forum's results versus YouTube's results, or YouTube and Twitch's results, whichever one, and then social media. Then you have 3 different cases to back you up of said data. And then there you go. You have at least some sort of legs to stand upon that you can switch off information and say, well, here 98% of people are approved. Here maybe only 68% of people here, and here 80% of people approve. So based off this. I see forums about wanting him from time to time, but weirdly enough on Reddit, a lot of people want him in game and upload 800 people in 24 days. Another one with 7,000 update, which is a Slenderman concept in 1 year. Only 7,000 updates over the course of 1 year. That's terrible. The upvote of 800 people, like, Slender Man is widely popular and widely known, so you have to keep that as a base. More people are generally going to know about Slender Man than those who don't. So only getting 800 people on day one and then 7,000 people over the course of a year. Unless we're talking 24 hours, the 7,000 upvotes, that's fine, but I want to see the upper end of that. If it stopped at 7,000, that's extremely low for such a popular concept, and that would be considered more evidence as not to include him into the game. So anytime you say Slender Man, anybody around, well, anybody who's essentially a millennial is going to say, yeah, I would like to see him there, because, you know, that was part of our childhood, things like that. Of course, we want to see him. The generation after us should know of Slender Man too, because the concept's been going on for quite some time. But after that, it essentially stops, because Slender Man, unfortunately, is starting to fall off the radar some. As H.P. Lovecraft once said, the oldest and strongest emotion of mankind is fear, and the oldest, strongest kind of fear is the fear of the unknown, which describes Slender Man perfectly. Is it really the fear of the unknown, though? The fear of the unknown would perfectly represent the void or the entity itself. But would that be Slender Man? When you think of Slender Man, do you think of the fear of the unknown? I guess wherever he whisks you away? Something of that nature? I don't know. How would Dead by Daylight benefit from Slender Man? Money. Next act. Next statement. Blah blah blah. Legion proxy base chaser. Blah blah blah. Slenderman could be an alternative route to making killers just as powerful as Spirit, but being fun for both sides. Interesting. No comment. The answer here is money. Capitalism. Money. That's the only reason it'd be added. How Slenderman act? How would Slenderman act in Dead by Daylight? This is not How would Slenderman act in Dead by Daylight? This is not for you to define. This is for the dev to define. Again, your wording and the confidence that you're trying to misconstrue in all of this. I understand you have to have confidence to display something to the public, but you're oversaturating it to the point to where you seem arrogant. How would Slenderman act in Dead by Daylight? Your statements just ooze overconfidence. You're not giving the devs any type of anything like this. This part explains how Slenderman would act. Not anything that leaves the statement open. And I'm saying this because if you're going to present this to a team of devs, they don't want to know how Slenderman would act. No, they want to know this is a general concept of some of the things that Slenderman could potentially do in Dead by Daylight. Or shorten what I said in just layman words. How Slenderman could act in Dead by Daylight. Here's an example of how Slenderman would act in Dead by Daylight. You have to leave it open to talk, open to feedback, but he stated earlier that he doesn't want any feedback or suggestions or all of that. Writing a closed concept like this, and you're wanting devs to read it, it's just bad. It's in bad taste. I want you to sit there and I want you to read everything I have to say about Slenderman, and you better not say a dang thing back to me. Like, nobody's gonna take that serious, bro. You need to, and you've had friends proofread this, and no, not one of them. And if you wanted to make it inquisitive, how would Slenderman act in Dead by Daylight? Put a question mark. Then, under here, instead of saying this part explains how Slenderman would act in Daylight, this part explains how Slenderman could act in Dead by Daylight. I know it seems like I'm harping over dumb things, but once you become in a professional settings, the way that you present things will either positively or negatively affect the people you are trying to tell things through. If you're headstrong, making all of these statements, oozing overconfidence, and not giving anybody time for feedback, people are just going to turn their brains off. They're going to nod and agree. Well, nod out of politeness. When your concept over is, they're not going to remember half of the things you say. They're going to be too busy thinking of, well, this guy's full of himself, than listening to your actual concept. At the end, when you feel like you've done a good job and everything like that, they're going to say, thank you for your time, send you on your way, talk crap about you after you walk out the door, and throw your concept respectively into the trash. Next concept. And your concept might be amazing, but you're making it extremely hard to follow through and read through everything because of how it's written. You're pitching an entire concept. This isn't just here's my killer, creation that I review every day. This is an entire concept, essentially a slideshow or a project or something like that, explaining boldly how Slenderman can be incorporated. Well, how Slenderman, because I said Slenderman could be incorporated in the game. You see how smooth that sounded? That's not what this person's saying. How Slenderman would be incorporated into the game. How Slenderman would make this game great. There's the statement that Trump made, make America greater again, or great again, as opposed to, I'm gonna make America great again. A commanding statement that's for support, or, well, America would be great again if everybody wasn't, and and you go da 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 da, and you list a whole bunch of other things. But anyway, this seems to just be a summary of what has been said thus far, from top all the way down to here. It's basically a summary, and he goes over, what he's pulling everything from, how he's similar to things, etc., etc. I gave you time to read this while having a minty rant. I hope I gave you enough time. If not, you can always pause. Why the entity would choose him? Because the entity, or Slenderman's power, causes people to become afraid and suffer, and the entity feeds off the emotions. His cat and mouse games give survivors entertainment. Slenderland is most likely ancient as the entity is powerful, but he would come to her realm willingly as long as there's people to play Slenderman's game. What? Slenderman doesn't do all of this to make a game. Slenderman by base Actually, never mind. Never mind. Just the whole Slender Man urban legend is people encroaching upon him and doing specific things, as well as child kidnapping and things like that. But the Slender Man's game that you're thinking of is people coming into his territory. It's his territory, it's his home. You're coming into his home and taking his valuables, so he's punishing you, essentially. Despite things being, or disappearing and things like that happening. But, anyway, he's unpredictable, not easy to counter. It's sheer luck of the survivor making it difficult for any of them to escape. That sounds absolutely terrible. You have to have sheer luck. So the survivors have to have sheer luck to be able to escape the trials. Why are you leaving things based off of luck? Just remove this entire last statement. No. There's a design. Long arms. Slender Man. We finally get to the nitty gritty, the actual concept. I've already done this in the past, but I'll do a brief. Special attack, tendril terror. Can launch a tendril spike over pallets and windows. Has a warp reality build, which a lot of people name their secondary ability, warp reality. It's very popular. He flickers in and out of invisibility, causing the terror radius to reach the entire map, but you cannot attack. Face to face. Terror radius sounds like static interference while looking directly. Excuse me. When looking directly at you while inside your terror radius, survivors' screens will fill with static, impairing their vision. Soul siphon. Well, face to face is the charging ability. Face to face is how you charge. Or is the charge that you get to your ability. Press the active ability while looking at a hooked survivor to activate Soul Siphon. Any survivor within 32 meters will scream, revealing their location. Hooked survivor. And of course, it's a scam. Phone ring. Skill checks, things like that, affect Splinterman's, or affect survivors. And precedes their hook. Decreases their hook time. Progresses the hook stage. There you go. Near exit gate, auras are shown. I went over this. It's like the Trickster's perk, the 8 pages. Dull totems rebuild themselves. When outside of Dull Totem, you receive your bloodlust faster. Changes game's mechanics. And makes it too OP. Generator is completed, and any survivor involved on the completed generator or exit gate gets the Oblivious status effect. Obsession suffers longer. That's the original. And this goes on into a second concept, which I'm just going to let this sit, or you can pause and read. Essentially, slow survivor movement, or survivor slows your movement, to 65%. But if the longer they're looking at you, they gain insanity. So this basically evolves on survivors forced to look at you to slow you down and keep you from actually moving towards them while also working on generators. So in essence, the more pages that you get, the faster you're going to move. And the only way for survivors to cut your movement speed is to look at you directly. And that's how that aspect works. There's a concept of him being put in the game. They gave him an icon and it's his little face, etc., etc. Here's the April Fool's teaser where people thought Springtrap and Slender Man was going to be put into the game. A lot of requested killers, a lot of videos to support his statements, etc., etc., fan art, things of that nature. If you read and look at everything I posted, thank you for going through it to the end. Post your thoughts below and tell me if you'd love to see. My dude, at the top you said that you wanted no feedback, and then at the bottom you had a change of heart, and now you want feedback. Thank you. First comment. I mean, good on you for all of this, but most of your research and lore is for the Operator, made by Marble Hornets, not Slenderman from the Something Awful forum. Slendy even has a face. Many, in fact, because he takes the guise of a trusted authority figure. His garb, voice, face change depending on who views him. The reason we get blank faces is because photographic electronic media doesn't capture his magnetic effects, though the Sigma radiation / slender sickness does corrupt them. I'm down for Slender Man and DVD. I just want a deeper dive than what 8 pages of Arrival and Slender offer. There you go. I actually did want to include that part, he says, but maxed out characters I could use, so I just stuck with what the majority describe him as. And he goes into detail about that. I also forgot to mention that Mythology Entertainment was splitting up and the rights to Slenderman would be unknown, so kinda unsure who actually owns him now, which might be a good thing since it's a possibility we won't get Sony's Slenderman. Why not change this now? Why are you admitting it in the comments and not changing it up in the main body? And there you go. I wrote a 100 odd page dissertation about Slenderman as a depression thanks piece in my early 20s. Based on the evolution of the character, added even more of that over the years, something about the concept can really suck some of us in, you know. Again, I'd really like to see something do this character justice. So he wrote a 100 page dissertation of Slenderman. Interesting. About now, your eyes will be the size of an English dictionary if you continued writing it. Tell me about it. Funny joke. Not meant to be malicious. For those of you who think he's a smartass, it's just a joke. Then he opens up to his statement. And then you have the haters. They always come out sometime. Well, they sometimes come out, not always. They're actually pretty good on this forum. I still don't get how so many people got wrapped up in a something awful Photoshop. Well, it wasn't just a Photoshop that people thrown in. As he explained earlier, it's folklore. It's an urban, whatchamacallit. It's a superstition. That's where it gains its grounds on. Plus, the games really, really ramp Slender Man up. And I'm not going to go over the rest of this. This is people saying that they love Slender Man, basically, and not providing any kind of feedback. And I'm going to leave it at that. So, like I said, I am trying to kind of speed go through this. I'm almost 2 hours in and have just finished. I need to go here and go up to creations. And trying to catch up on everything that I'm doing. So, like I said from the start, I'm not going to go over everything. If you want to come back, go to Mr. Madness's post about Slender Man and why he should be in the future. It's a very good read. Go in, learn you something. Leave a comment. There's your address right there at the top. You can pause, take it, type it in, do whatever you need to do. The hellsing, the fashion, the slender, all of that. I actually have to pick up the pace ever so slightly now to try to get everything back in order. A lot of concepts. It was something I hadn't seen before in a concept, so I'd figure I'd take that and build the killer from here. Although the idea of trick skill checks is great. And the concept art is finally done. Oh, he finally finished the concept art. Nice. He did send me a message saying that he did change some things, or he was going to think about making his killer stronger and things like that. He also clarified that, well, I'll just show you what he wrote. There wasn't anything disrespectful or hateful, so. There. So thank you for the feedback, or all the feedback on the illusionist. I'm currently working on changing things, making him a bit stronger, and adding some extra penalties to being insane. But I'll clarify some things here. The draining mechanic is similar to stalking with Michael Myers. It's not like the old doctor with it being passive, but there isn't a limit like Michael Myers, since survivors can regain sanity, giving him more the drain. So it doesn't just go up and then stop. It can continuously drain the same survivor as long as they're standing near another survivor. You can keep feeding. The projections being compared to the artist were very fair. I didn't think about her since I barely got to play her. I like to think of them as a fake version of the monsters in Amnesia, The Dark Descent, and how they disappear when they get really close. Again, thank you for the amazing feedback. See? He clarified things there. He kept it positive, up-vibed, and all of that. And gave, a fair assessment back. Even if he was like, oh, this guy's full of crap, and I'm not going to listen to a thing that he says. He still considered what I said, and then wrote something. I mean, it didn't have to necessarily be this long, but I mean, he's also clarifying things. So, all of this didn't necessarily have to be included. Well, actually, to be technically. From here to here. All of this didn't necessarily have to be said. If somebody gives you advice that you generally do not like or do not care about, you don't need to backlash at them and say hateful things and get into an otherwise blown out argument. All you gotta do is say thank you for all the feedback. Like that. That's all you need to do. If you're not gonna listen to what they're saying, just say thanks for the feedback and go on to the next person. Keep it semi-professional. And even if you don't want to keep it professional, just keep it more of an upbeat conversation. Because that person that you're blowing off and rudely saying things to may just help you out in the future on a different concept, or they might bring something in at a later date. You never know. There might be a YouTuber that has, a very big channel and you've just blown them off. That coverage that you could have gotten, now it's gone. You never know what kind of pull people have. You don't want to burn unnecessary bridges. But the fact that I appreciate here is he didn't just say thank you for all the feedback. He literally said thanks for the feedback. He's currently working on things. And then he even clarified what I kind of asked him, like what does this actually work? Things like that. That's what I respect when it comes to creators like that. If you can't find the need to update your creation with this information or put something out, then you might not, have that creative instinct. Being a creator involves a lot of thinking and a lot of writing. If you don't like writing and you write everything in short, small sentences all the time, you're probably not going to be a very good creator. Things need to be flushed out. They need to be over explained in some cases because people cannot read your mind. So standing within 10 meters of a survivor, the illusionist can use the ability to drain his prey, which is like a stalking ability, almost like Michael Myers, just, closer range. There is no limit. It drives them into insanity. He can then summon, shoot projections out, etc., etc., making them even more insane. These projections require the illusionist to use power. The projection remains for 10 seconds. Everything here that I went over before has been way more defined. I love it. At least how it's defined. There's reality warp again. Everybody loves using that. It's kind of like a creation meme now, and I'm actually starting to like that. It's kind of funny. It's almost like a pseudo contest. The first creator that gets the term reality warp into the game and uses their concept kind of gets the victory here. And it's kind of like bragging rights. He also added a note here. Reality warp is meant to give the killer a choice of making his illusions be at their strongest, but him at his weakest, or use the projections to deal damage for the trade-off of having to drain more survivors. It's defined why you would do all of this. It defines how long it'll take tier 3, or that it's going to be a lot more difficult to reach. It fully drains them, things like that. It's a lot more defined. So when you're reading through this, you actually get everything done. It tells you about collision, things like that. The false skill checks are defined. What they're going to look like, things like that. So it basically shows what he's thinking more. It basically shows what his brain sees, as opposed to leaving your imagination up and leaving misunderstandings. I am going to one day go back over all of this. This is just kind of a brisk run through. He's got perks that we went over last time, things like that, and finally the art, which is amazing. It's building comments, it's building support, things like this. When it becomes finished, or at least into a polished state where, it's happy and hasn't been updated for a couple of days, then I'll probably come back. So essentially, whenever I get everything on this docket blown out, I'm going to come back and actually do another take on it. We're gonna go through everything, note the similarities, the differences, things like that. But I just wanted to show you guys that we're interested in the illusionist, that it has been updated and it has been further defined to where you can see, for the most part, what the creator is thinking instead of just leaving your imagination to think of how things come out. Um, I did not get far. I got one, two, three, four. I got four things in. That would be today. Those four would be tomorrow. One, two, three, four. That's 3 days. Still 4 days behind. I think I need to do more. I'm already coming up to 2 hours. I did all that in 11 minutes though. um, see how long this is. Decent. Might be able to go over that. My Bloody Valentine. Short. Can go over that. The Hazard. That's the, yeah, that's this guy. I already went over the Hazard, but it was edited. Seems to all be the same. I don't know what he edited. Let's see. By base, power gauge, thick clouds, movement speed, very difficult to reach, return to specific, blah blah blah. Still does no damage, lighting up, which explodes the mist. Deafens and obliviousness and blinds. Still does no damage. Some more effects have been added to lighting up, I believe. Could be the same. So yeah, this for the most part is the same. I think he just added in the document that has everything else on it. Yeah, it's just this bottom part that was added in. I think everything else is the same. So anybody that wants to see the concept and me go over the Hazard, my original ideas, that's actually in a previous live stream. Fairly recent. So I can knock that off. And that's 5 concepts. So I'm going to take a slight break and then we can get back on to this. Make sure sound's on. So, well, I almost made a mistake there. Let's go through. Why did the new one not go off? I didn't finish that. Sure, I'll leave you with this cursed image. Look me in the eyes when I'm talking to you, boy. Alright, I'm back. I think I've went through and covered enough at a sufficient speed thinking about things and trying to move. Oh boy. At a fast amount of speed's just making me very scatterbrained. So I've come to the conclusion that I'm just gonna do what I do and not worry about it. If the work keeps piling up, at least there is work to do, you know? So I should be happy about it. Because one day I'm going to get all caught up and be like, man, what am I going to do now? I'm going to actually have to stream games. Killer concept. The Madman. Licensed killer from League of Legends. That's probably not going to happen because League of Legends is still pretty big. Getting a license from one of their characters is going to be a pain. Even if it's just a side beast or something like that, it's going to be a pain. I've never played League of Legends. Or LOL. Never once. Never looked at basically anything about it. I mean, I know the basis of the game and how, you know, you win. But I know absolutely, positively nothing. So if I say something that's wrong or doesn't fit with the lore or something like that, I apologize. Feel free to correct me in the comments or anything like that, or explain something to me that I'm not getting. So let's jump in this. Wacky Bulk Bruiser from League of Legends. Got a rework to be a creepy theme. His name is Edmundo. His alias is the Madman. Male, Oswald Asylum, yada yada. Same base stats. Tall. Lore, you can read that. Overview. The Madman is an unrelenting killer able to empower himself as he injures or treats, according to him, survivors using his power, Adrenaline Rush. He can bully and effectively chase survivors. Bully. His personal perks: infected weapon, blunt force trauma, not finished yet, enables him to apply negative effects after winning chases and lengthening the trauma. His weapon is the bone saw. Main power, or primary power, is Adrenaline Rush. Whenever the Madman injures a healthy survivor or puts a survivor into the dying state, that survivor drops an adrenaline pack. The Madman can collect these adrenaline packs to aid himself in the trial. Press the power button to consume one adrenaline pack to gain 10% haste effect for 6 seconds. Cannot stack. Only problem I have with that, without reading further, is if he injures a healthy survivor or puts them into a dying state, that survivor drops an adrenaline pack. So each survivor, unless it's a one hit down, will drop 2 adrenaline packs after being injured and put into the dying state. So afterwards, you can then consume both packs, one right after another, and get a 10% haste effect. Now it says cannot stack, but yeah, they do kind of stack. You can't use them at the same time, but they do stack. You can use one after another. And why? Because there's no cooldown added. So, one adrenaline pack gives you a 10% haste effect increase for 6 seconds. So you essentially have 10% haste for the next 12 seconds. As it's defined now, there is no cooldown. There's no effects that happen after the adrenaline is used, aka the blight. Blight has to use his serum right after doing the rush and things like that. Whereas this guy doesn't seem to have any type of negative or cooldown effect after using the adrenaline. Just to this far. Definitely needs to add a cooldown, or you're going to be moving at, what's 10% of 4.6? That's 0.46 added. So you're essentially moving, it's like 0.96, 4.96, but essentially moving 5 meters per second for 12 seconds. That is an insane amount of speed that this character has. So, you're either going to have to nerf his initial speed, which it doesn't even clarify, or it doesn't say that his speed's, yeah, it is 4.6. You're going to have to either nerf his base speed, because he's going to be using adrenaline moving at way, way, way too fast. Very slightly to 4.4. And then getting an extra 4.4, giving you a 4.8 speed bonus. Which isn't completely fair in this case. It's not completely fair, but you can get 2 adrenaline packs for 12 seconds to get a huge boost of speed. But something needs to be added. If you don't want to affect the base speed and do that balancing act, which is going to be an absolute pain to get down, to get everything, his base speed and everything else bumped down, and math equations and all of that, just give this a cooldown. They not be able to stack, so you can't use one after another, or use 2 at the same time and then get a 20% haste effect essentially for 6 seconds. But you can use one after another. Just add a cooldown between them. That's all you gotta do. So you're not just non-stop zooming around the map. Survivors can also pick up adrenaline packs, which when consumed will heal for 1 health state, can grant them the same 10% haste effect for 6 seconds. That would be nice, except for the fact that after a survivor is injured, they first drop the adrenaline pack. And after you're injured, survivors get that super fast haste, you know, that injured hit that allows them to get away from the killer, that speed boost. What survivor by any name would not use the speed boost and stay sitting in front of the killer to pick up their adrenaline pack? To just get downed and drop another adrenaline pack anyway. So what's going to happen is survivor's going to get hit, killer's going to, instead of continue the chase, they're going to pick up the adrenaline pack and essentially use it to re-catch up to the survivor very quickly and re-down them. The survivor is then going to drop another adrenaline pack because it's a hit from injured to dying state. And this isn't defined that only a survivor can only drop 1 pack per chase, or 1 pack per heal, or anything like that. So they're going to drop another one after going down, and the killer's going to pick up the adrenaline pack, use it, and then immediately zoom off to the next generator, or pick up the survivor and use that haste effect to hook them essentially wherever they want. So when it comes to hooks and things like that, this is going to severely crush a lot of perks like agitation and things like that, but it also stacks way too overpoweredly with them. So I would like to see, well, I don't say I'd like to see, but also my suggestion to add is a cooldown, so you can't just use one adrenaline stack, move, use a second adrenaline stack when the first one wears off, and then continue to zoom around the map for essentially 12 seconds versus whatever. So the three main things that I'd like to see is one, that the adrenaline haste effect or the adrenaline effect cannot be used while carrying a survivor. Either pause the timer or just make it to where it does nothing and the timer still goes while a survivor is in the arms of a killer. So you're not stepping on any type of carrying perks like agitation. You're also not nullifying effects like breakout and things like that, so survivors can't even catch you. That's one of the main things. Two, add a cooldown to where you can't just hit a survivor, adrenaline pack, catch said survivor, slap them back down, pick that up, adrenaline pack, and then go to your next objective. Give it a cooldown to where, and also, like I said, make it to where the, let's give it a cooldown so they can't just keep chaining adrenaline packs. Third is making the timer, like I said, either pause or continue on but have no effect while you're picking up survivors. Cooldown. Wait, I missed my other point. I think I just repeated twice. I'm just gonna start over. I'm known for repeating myself 1,000 times anyway. Add a cooldown between uses. So you're not just adrenaline pack training. You hit a survivor, adrenaline pack, catch them, knock them down, grab the adrenaline pack, and then immediately rush off to another location, like essentially Legion does. That way. Two, add it to where the haste status effect isn't applied while carrying a survivor. Make it just the original 4.6 meters per second unless you're running agitation or iron grasp or something like that to extend time or speed. So it's not getting in the way of that. And then my third thing that I was going to say, I completely forgot because I confused myself, and it was very important that this third thing be incorporated besides the cooldown and the carrying survivors thing. There was one thing that I was trying to make sure that I said. I don't remember. Give me a moment. I can't remember. It was something obvious that needed to be added to this particular concept. It's something that it was missing and needed to be further clarified, and I don't remember what I was going to say. Hopefully somebody brings it to their attention. Also, just kind of out in the left field, I'm also curious how many packs this person can hold at one time. So that'll be your fourth thing. How many packs can he hold? Because, I mean, if you essentially go all game without using packs until you need them, and you just start chaining packs, you can essentially end the game. Especially if you can force a 3 gen and you can just pow, 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 and sustain that method of force and pressure for a long time. Next, when the madman has 3 adrenaline packs, adrenaline rush changes to adrenaline overdose. During an adrenaline overdose, the madman gains 15% haste and cannot be stunned by survivors. Pallet drops head on, power struggle, decisive strike. The madman can still be blinded. However, any pallets that would stun the madman during adrenaline overdose breaks immediately instead. Adrenaline overdose lasts 20 seconds. Picking up and using adrenaline packs takes 1.5 seconds. If adrenaline rush or overdose duration ends while the madman is carrying a survivor, he will drop the survivor back to injured state. So you got it in your own clause. So when he gets 3 packs, which isn't that hard, that's a down on the first survivor, then 1 hit on the survivor either after he gets unhooked or the survivor coming towards him. Or if you run to a generator with multiple people, you want to essentially to just legion it and just save your packs. 15% is 0.46 plus 2.3, so you're looking at 6.9 added upon that, so you're looking at 5. Either 09 or 5.19 speed. It's not that much of a speed increase, but it also lasts 2 seconds longer. So you're essentially getting not necessarily the greatest increase in speed. But since it lasts 20 seconds, it makes it worthwhile to use. There's obvious changes that need to be made here. The cannot be stunned by survivors thing's definitely going to have to be changed. Because if they pallet stun you, you can make it to where the pallet breaks when you get stunned by it. You can do that. But you have to take the stun. The pallet is still breaking over your body. You still are going to get stunned. So if you don't want it to be that much of a stun, you can make, stuns and all of that last X amount of time less to signify the adrenaline effect. Head-on rush is going to stun you every time, regardless. You might be juiced up and feeling good, but, the locker coming out and the survivor and all of that hitting you, you're gonna get stunned. Again, just decrease stun durations because you're adrenalined up. Power struggle, decisive, same thing. You're going to be stunned regardless of what you do. You can't give yourself an immortal state where people can drop pallets on you and then you can just continue chase. Because what's going to happen is once you're in chase with a survivor, pallets are going to become useless, and all they're going to be able to rely on are windows, which are limited use. After that window's used up, you're taking a hit regardless. That's the end of it. You can't drop a pallet, so there's no use for it. And like I said, anybody who saves their packs are just going to wait until they're in a chase, use the 3-pack method, and instantly down somebody, essentially. If you're trying to stack a end-all be-all effect like that, adrenaline overdose. It's balanced, but adrenaline overdose is actually a deadly effect. So after the adrenaline overdose ends, since it's going to last in upwards of 20 seconds, there needs to be some sort of huge negative that occurs. Like with a Blight, after using his stuff or his boosters at the end, he has to inject himself with something to essentially balance himself. At the end of an adrenaline overdose, which is deadly by nature, you're going to have some sort of huge backlash that leaves your character just absolutely just hurting. You can double down and say if you have an extra adrenaline, an extra adrenaline pack after the adrenaline overdose ends, he can just inject himself like the Blight. But if you elect to use it at exactly 3 adrenaline packs and you have no adrenaline by the time that ends, then you get stunned for like 5 seconds or something like that. Like, it's gonna be, dramatic. It's very, very dramatic because you're essentially killing yourself. Adrenaline is very deadly when used in large doses. Picking up and using adrenaline packs takes 1.5 seconds. Very quick. If adrenaline rush or overdoses duration ends while the madman is carrying a survivor, he will drop the survivor back to the injured state. I would remove the while the madman is carrying a survivor, he'll drop the survivor back to an injured state, because if you use an adrenaline pack to catch back up to a survivor and you down them fairly quickly, you're just going to be stuck standing there waiting for your adrenaline rush to end. Or overdose wise, if you're in overdose and you take a survivor down within the last couple of seconds, you're going to be stuck sitting there waiting for this overdose effect to end. Then if you do elect to add any type of stun effect or anything like that, well, I mean, I guess they down the survivor, they'll have a pack for that, but you're going to have to wait even extra or even more seconds after that to be able to pick up a survivor. So I would just make it to where either, like I said, the timer stops or the timer continues to go on and essentially runs out. Adrenaline overdose wise, as soon as you down a survivor, it should just end. Like most other effects. I mean, Michael Myers is the exception to this particular rule. In tier 3, he can hit multiple people, and there are other killers, but I mean, you're going off of an adrenaline rush. Once you down a survivor, you really don't need that effect to keep lasting. And that's particularly up to you. I mean, you can make it keep lasting and things like that and keep everything the same, but I would indeed take out this clause that you tried to use as balancing, which I appreciate the efforts, but it's going to be in the way of things if you get a quick takedown, or if you're reliant on adrenaline, or like I said, towards the end game, you save your adrenalines and try to just use them all consecutively at the end of the match to keep that overdose rush going. The problem with the overdose rush is if you take a survivor down and you have, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 seconds left and you can't get to a hook in time, you're going to have to wait that out for it to end. And that's wasted times on gens and everything else. Again, after every adrenaline rush or overdose, there should be some sort of effect. Maybe the regular adrenaline rush not have any type of stun effect. Who knows? I don't know what it balance out to, but the adrenaline overdose, there's definitely going to be some sort of backlash. As it sits now, this killer could actually essentially become an alternative killer for the Blight. However, you're nullifying that by making it a licensed killer from League of Legends. I would rewrite the concept to be something else that's not happen to be licensed for anybody, and I would happily throw an alternative killer for blight onto this. Very happily. But I can't do that as it sits now because it's a licensed killer. All licensed killers are their own entities. So please, 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 take away the League of Legends, design a killer that's, rewrite everything. Design this killer is based off of an original concept and move away from that. And then I'll easily can give it its own video, call it an alternative killer, add it to the alternative killer list, and all of that. Made by Kos, or is it Chos? 57190. And I apologize if I missed any names earlier. Perk-wise. Whenever a survivor is hit by your basic attack, that survivor receives a 4% penalty to repairing and healing for the remainder of the trip. Really? Really? For the remainder of the trial? Really? And it can stack up to 12%. Really? You don't think that a 12% repair speed for the remainder of the trial is not overpowered? Really? Come on now. Come on now. You're looking at a 12% healing penalty and a 12% repairing penalty. If you hit all survivors with that, that's going to make gens take an extra, 9 or 10 seconds to complete? Granted, you have to hit that same survivor 3 times, or essentially down them to get the effect going, but I mean, it's not that hard to do. For the remainder of the trial, if you're going to do something like this is going to have to be a hex that can be disabled. Survivors have to have a way to somehow counter your ability, your perk, or your perk specifically, or it's unethical. You can't put something and say, well, for the rest of the trial, you're going to be stuck with this. So I would essentially buff this and then make it a hex perk. Because there's going to be a lot of angry people that are stuck with a repair speed penalty for the end. Like, just think of the Natnophobia stacked with this extra 12% on top of that, plus other perks and things like that that are made to make gen speeds as slow as possible. It might not seem like much, but if you think about that, unlike nurses and things like that, that the slower you do things, the more effective they are. It's very significant. For the killer itself, it's not very significant, but for other killers, it really is. 12% is a lot. And if you're gonna go, you might as well go all out and add a little bit to it. I don't mean super buff the thing, but add a little bit to it, give it a small buff, and make it a hex. As opposed to something that you're just kind of stuck with. Nobody wants more thanatophobia on their life. Granted, I don't even have this open. Thanatophobia is quite the decrease. Thanatophobia. So each injured, dying, or hooked survivor incurs a stackable 5%, all the way up to 20%. And you know when thanatophobia comes in, how much slower gens take. That feeling of just, this is gonna be a slog on top of that. Adding 15% to that is painful. Heck, even adding 5% to that, that's painful. It's very painful. And you're adding a base that just goes up. The more that you hit a survivor, the more this base is going up. Is the thing about it. It never goes down. It's just going to keep going up. There's no way to counteract it. The way to counteract the thanatophobia is just get good, scrub. That is simple. Just get good, scrub. Heal yourself, play the game, get good. This is never get touched, scrub. Never get seen. There's no counter to it. Once you get hit, you're stuck with that effect for the rest of the game, which is why I say it should be it should either be made into a hex and buffed, or made into a hex token perk. It can also be ran that way and be efficient and just have one trigger upon it. Blunt force trauma. Whenever a survivor is hit by your basic attack, blunt force trauma activates for 60 seconds. Survivors suffering from it are affected by the oblivious status effect and cannot use their items. So you might as well just say the oblivious and the incapacitated effect, because I guess they can still repair generators and things like that, but why? After hitting them, you're getting adrenaline packs and everything else. Is it really necessary that they're not able to see your or get your tear radius or anything like that while in chase when they know you're gonna chase them? At this time, it's kind of redundant. Then the cannot use their items thing needs to have its separate cooler, or a separate timer on it. Cannot use their items for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, I don't know, maybe 20 seconds even. Enough to essentially till the chase is going to end. I could probably get behind having, X amount of seconds on top of that, but 60 seconds? If I manage to escape you and you go over and go after another survivor, which with that new survivor's perk, I think it's called like overcome or something like that, it's going to be more likely. So I won't be able to see you coming after me, which I'm already going to know you're going to be after me because, well, it's a chase. But I can't use my item. So if I do get away from you, I can't use my items. If I have self-care, it really doesn't matter. Or if I run to a boon totem's range or something like that, but not able to use, that's just an odd thing to have at the end of that. Are you somebody who gets flashlighted often and you're just sick and tired of getting pallet drop flashlighted? Cannot use their items. I don't know. If you're gonna add this effect in there, or both effects in there, the oblivious status effect, actually all of this, now that I think about it, it's way too long to be 60 seconds. There also needs to be a cooldown between activations. So the cooldown being 60 seconds is fine. These need to be decreased. Because it's just kind of silly to draw out the oblivious status effect and the ability of them not being able to use their items for an entire minute. That's silly. And then, not finished yet, but I always say, A killer should always have a meh perk. This is kind of that meh perk. And not finished yet. When a survivor is killed or sacrificed, you gain a token up to one token. Up to one token. Then why not just say whenever a survivor is killed or sacrificed, and then say what the effect does? I don't understand. While you have a token, you can see and kick completely repaired generators, regressing it by 30%. The generator cannot be kicked again until a survivor interacts with it. Besides the obvious thing that's a problem here, if you run this perk, you can no longer use Ruin, which is a very, very widely known perk that people use. It's one of the meta perks. So instantly there, you can't use Ruin. And I don't think regressing something that's already been completed by 30% is worth trading the value of Ruin for. So I would redo this perk anyway to make it somewhat useful. Secondly, as I mentioned before, if there's only one token and you can only have one token, then make it whenever or when a survivor, or the first survivor, or a survivor, or any type of survivor is killed or sacrificed, then say whatever report, or say whatever the perk does. And then just put, it can only be used once after all of it, to simplify this. And then 3, the main thing. I know where you took your inspiration from, and I wish people would stop. Take inspiration from the actual game. Do not take inspiration from other people's works. Please, stop harping on this idea of regressing completely completed generators. So let me run something by you, because I don't think most people that keep wanting to regress completely completed generators as a thing. When it comes to programming and things like that, and writing core mechanics of gameplay, each particular phase of a generator, where you see it changing and doing things like that, have to be programmed in. So for instance, if I wanted to spawn a 25% generator in, that's a completely different state and a completely different object as opposed to a generator that hasn't been worked on at all, versus a generator that's been completed. It's a completely different object entity and a completely different programmable object and state and things like that. They're completely separate. When you complete a generator and the lights and all of that go off, the generator is now in a 100% completed state. It's a completely different entity and thing as opposed to the ones that aren't being completed and the ones that are being completed with the pistons moving and things like that. It's all different. It's not all one thing. It is all like in the same file as being a generator, but the different states are different. If you want to spawn in a generator at 50%, done, you have to type in a specific command or code for that. So in order for you to be able to regress a completely completed generator, you're going to have to add in a heck of a lot more programming. And why would they do that for one perk? You're changing the core mechanics of gameplay. That's what I'm talking about when I say core mechanic of gameplay. They've yet to code anything in that affects already completed generators to make them be able to regress or go up or anything like that. So that's not something that you should try to incorporate into the game, because it's going to take a long time for somebody to go through. Then it's going to have to be tested and a whole bunch of other things. And it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of skill to get everything done. So until they implement it into the game, don't try to change a core aspect. It's a pain in the butt, and it's not worth it for one perk. So this I wouldn't keep in, because you're changing core aspects of game. And I know exactly where you got this concept from. And I wish that person would have heeded my advice and taken that away from their original project, because it's a very popular project and it's gotten a lot of attention and people are starting to pull inspiration from it. It's got two things that I always know. It changes the core aspect of game, and it also has a mini mori inside of it as well. And people are taking inspiration from it because it's popular. People like popular. They go off of popular. They bandwagon popular. And they're using things from it which aren't necessarily correct. Just because it's popular doesn't mean that it's correct. I actually said this, I think yesterday or the day before, to somebody in another section on another site. He was stating that basically everybody agreed with this one person, so they are essentially correct. Even though there was no factual data, no support in anything. It was no support in evidence or anything like that. It was just a statement thrown out at the heat of the moment, and everybody was like, yeah, that sounds right, yeah. While the other person, who wasn't necessarily liked, other person was me, by the way, because I had a very firm stance on this, wasn't necessarily liked, but I had a lot of factual data behind myself. So even though they were trying to essentially bully me into submission and trying to force me to join their bandwagon, I'm like, no. He has the popular opinion, but I literally have data here that proves me correct without a situation of doubt, or without any type of doubt, or whatever they say in courts. I don't remember now. I've gotten so lost in my own rant, my brain's not thinking anything other than this, even though I'm mid-review. There's nothing they could doubt because the information was there. But because the other person who was wrong and didn't have any supporting argument or anything, they just made a very quick statement that, was like a little memey and a little funny, so people jumped on it, was wrong. You're 100% wrong, and I was 100% right, but since you made yourself seem more popular, people agree with you. It's how the world works. People don't go with the undeniable information in front of them. They go with whoever they like more. That's why I don't like juries, by the way. One person could be completely innocent, but if somebody are innocent for what they're being tried for, but if somebody says, oh, well, back in 2011, he did this and that and that and that, people are going to instantly say, well, that's all I need to hear. Guilty. But anyway, no. You cannot mess with the 100% completed generator. That is a milestone. It is updated in the overlay, which is another thing you'll have to go back and redo. It's updated in the overlay as things go. As a milestone for Survivor is the thing that anchors their sanity. It's the thing they base whether they are doing a good job in the trial, everybody's doing a good job, or everybody's doing a terrible job. There's value from that number. And if that number can change at any time and go negative, the game is no longer quote unquote, quote unquote, quote unquote, quote balanced, quote unquote, quote unquote, quote unquote, ellipsis. Add-ons, I don't think I really want to read the add-ons because they're probably going to increase rush speed and things like that. Yeah, they just add on rush. And there's the killer concept of the madman, which could be the junkie, like adrenaline junkie, a joke on that. Any type of joke. The creators and devs and all of that, they love memes and jokes. Again, from the top, if you can get rid of this League of Legends license thing and make it into an original concept, and fix out a couple of the issues and things that you run into, I would definitely have no problem saying it's an alternative killer for Blight and making a full thing on it. Which I should go back through and write some. But as of now, everything's going to stay live stream wise. If I see one that's good, I'll go back and specifically name it that particular thing. But until then, I'm lazy. We went over the hellsing, the cursed Nia, or Nia, fashion, Slenderman. We're gonna wait for this to be flushed out on the illusionist. The madman just went over. My Bloody Valentine is probably what I'm gonna do next. The hazard, I popped into and peeked a little bit. I'm pretty sure that was the only thing that's changed. Yeah, and he's repeated himself like 18 different times saying that the backstory involved police brutality and things like that, so he removed it. And everybody keeps asking the same questions. When you go through a forum, you should really read to make sure you're not just saying the same thing that somebody else has said. This has gotten a lot of traction, but most of the comments in them say something about backstory, and he just repeats himself. If you want to add a chain into somebody else's, then I guess I should. So, let's say this guy says something about backstory. Hit the quote button to quote that particular person. Yeah, they're going to get a notification or anything, but it chains the conversations together. And then input what you want to say on top of that. So it chains everything together, so you don't have to stop and read every single conversation in the chain. You can just go to the end of the chain and see everything. Well, it quotes the last thing that they say. Let me be deliberate about this. And you can bring multiple ideas together that way, as opposed to just saying the same thing somebody else says. You can just elaborate on it. He's already stated, which like I said, like 18 other people stated before. And that's an exaggeration. It's only like 2 or 3, but you know what I mean. Have stated before, backstory, and he said the same thing. And I'm like, bro, just quote somebody who said something about the backstory and then elaborate off of that further, as opposed to saying the same thing. Or just upvote it. Instead of saying something about backstory, if you have nothing to add, upvote. And that's all you gotta do. My Bloody Valentine. I don't think I've ever seen My Bloody Valentine. I've seen a game or a concept that involved a female going into the mines, finding essentially a dead body. I guess lover, brother, something or another. And then trying to escape from the miner who was chasing them. I've seen like a little expert of that in a game, but I've never seen actually My Bloody Valentine. No idea what it's about. Mm, Map in a mine shaft. Generally, I would skip over concepts, but you keep it very nice and very short, and you leave it open to the imagination. I would love to have an indoor map that's not a building for once. It's not some gigantic building that you run into, because most buildings in here are some sort of institute, like a school, a hospital, something like that. It's derived from a building. To have an actual minecart shaft, where you can run along the rails, you can fall down holes in the actual mine shaft, and you can add all kinds of ambience and other things that can possibly happen during the map. I like that. Mine shafts generally have a lot of paths you can go. Some are looping, some aren't, depending on how they decide to design everything. It's gonna have to be semi unrealistic though, to the point of, well, most mine shafts they're only digging for a specific mineral, and it's not what you're thinking of. It's not like a Minecraft mine shaft where you have things going all over the place and a cavern below and things here and things there, and you can go exploring out and about like that. It's usually very cramped, very dark, unless they have lights and stuff. But I mean, the headlamps are really all you need. Very bleak, very boring. So they're gonna have to go past the realms of realism and have to design a map around it. So essentially, they're going to make a Minecraft style mine shaft, but there's going to have to be connecting pathways instead of you making them yourself. I would love to see a mine shaft that incorporates the outside area too, like connects them together, different places or something like that. Just because, as much as I like inside maps, wink wink, I don't want another just strictly inside map. Please give me the ability to go outside. The RPD station almost nailed it. Almost. If I'd have had a lot more run around outside room and less of cramped corridors where you really don't have much you can do, I would have enjoyed that map a lot better. Also, it's also a building that's inside that doesn't seem to have a lot of windows that you can jump out of and things like that. Like Midwich has, well, I mean, they have broken holes in the walls, but they're essentially windows that you can jump out of to get to the yard. RPD don't have that. Anyway, the killer is the miner. His power is the miner's delight. The miner will be able to pull out a nail gun. Well, that caught me by surprise. He can aim the nail gun at a survivor and shoot them, causing them to bleed. The reload time is 17 seconds, and nails getting shot are very visible for survivors. Nail gun reference from one of the deaths. I see. Why 17? Well, I guess it makes... Now, why 17 seconds, actually, though? It's gonna have to have a lot of shots, which I mean, I wish you defined how many shots you get before you have to reload. Perks, tasteless revenge. Oh, that's just it. His power is just to pull out a nail gun and shoot. Oh, and yeah, this needs to be greatly defined. Not further, but greatly defined. If that's the only thing you're gonna have. Yeah, greatly define this. That is the bread and butter. Not all of these pictures and things like that. If you take that out, you literally, in the backstory, you have like very little to say. Which for the day, when I'm trying to kind of speed run things, pseudo speed run, I'm going faster than what I usually do, but I'm also leaving out a lot of important details and things like that and not going super in depth. Define this a lot. This is your bread and butter, the power. Define everything and possibly even add things in because the power defines the killer, and if the power ain't strong, people don't want to play them. Perks, you have an obsession. Hooking that survivor, the entity will block the nearest generator for medium duration. Define it. Crisp hit, when damaging a generator, your red light eyes will go away for a short duration. Your red light eyes will go away. You're talking about like the stain? Pyramid Head says something like this, and it goes away until the generator is either touched, or it might have a timer on it too. For X amount of time until generator is touched or interacted with. Mentally hurt, when killing a survivor, the nearest survivor terror radius will go away for a short duration. So they get the oblivious status effect. Why is this killer so weak? And why incorporate this into the game? Now, if the survivor is overpowered or something like that, then there was no thought. Like, it seems like there was no thought put into this particular killer. Or, remember, like I said earlier, people that talk in very short sentences and things like that probably don't have that skill set available to actually become a creator. Because that's all this is very short, not drawn out, or any type of information style creators. So the point that I was making earlier, here is the example for this. And unfortunately, I mean, this is in 2020, but unfortunately, sir, I might use you as an example. As, I don't want to say bad concept ideas, but concept ideas that need a lot of work. If you text in short sentences, short replies, things like that, well, I can't say text, everybody does. If you write comments and things like that in short supply or replies, and you just expect people to read your mind and interpret things how you expect them to be interpreted, then you're probably not suited to be a hardcore creator. You can paste a basic design and then say, hey community, here is the basis of something. Elaborate, please, or something along the lines of that. But that's probably as far as you're ever going to get. This is way too shallow. It needs to be flushed out, and it needs to be more thought of. It's fine if this is a rough draft that you're going to go back to over time and add more to. But I mean, it's been 2020. Survivor, big liability. You have a higher chance of escaping a hook. When you have escaped the hook, you will soon get revealed the nearest chest for a short duration. Why, though? What is higher chance? Higher chance slippery meat wise is an extra, like, what, 4%? 3-4% on top. That's what that means. There's slippery meat that shows you a chest. Plus, why not just run deliverance instead? Like, you are like, it's so weak. Help is needed. Help. When healing a survivor, the killer's aura will be revealed for a short duration. Now we're getting somewhere. While healing a survivor, the killer's aura will be revealed for a short duration. Say what the short duration is, but now you're getting somewhere. This is actually a pretty good perk. Because what I'm going to do with Survive with Friends is I'm going to keep my friend injured and I'm going to follow them everywhere we go. And every couple of seconds, when we need to know where the killer is, I'm going to start healing them to figure out where the killer is. There's going to have to be a cooldown of like 30 to 60 seconds in between. So it can't be just completely cheesed, but yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. I'm going to keep them almost healed, and then I'm just going to go in, touch them ever so slightly to get a location or an aura revealed to see where killer is, and if the killer's nearby, I'm going to completely finish the heal, and then we're just going to send it. Now you're getting into a good concept. Keep in mind that it's towards the end, after writing and pasting and doing everything and making this entire concept. By the time his body's warmed up to start giving good ideas, he's already towards the end. From here, he should have went back after making a decent perk, going all the way back and redoing this concept again. Second, when dropping a pallet on a killer or stunning the killer, you leave no scratch marks behind. There you go. That's something that can be worked with. It's going to have to be further defined like everything else, because nobody knows things like that, but the last two things, and that's how generally creating a concept works. You start doing the base things like bio, maps, things like that, and you start off a concept and you get ideas, and by the time you get the first draft, well, I am say first draft, the rough draft out, you're warmed up. Towards the end, he's making these bangers. Now he needs to go back up and apply that again into his perks and everything else, and run it through again to update, make things better, add more details, etc. It's one of the processes of creation. It's one of the joys of creation, you might say. FNAF, Joy of Creation, or The Joy of Creation. Good game. And all of you out there that are now his name's Nady Boy. I was like, hopefully he didn't sign that with his real name. All of you creators that are out there aspiring to make a creation of some sort, you have to know the scale of which you have to push for, at least bare minimum. This here, this is not bare minimum. This would be like, nah, I don't want to insult this person. This is just, it's below the bare minimum. This is a, here's a start, guys, please take over my concept type thing. Nate's probably younger, and probably, you know, well, I'm going to assume Nate is younger and hasn't, you know, went to college or anything like that to hone writing skills and things like that. It's probably still in school, like middle school. I don't know. Nowadays, could be in high school, because, I mean, phew, that generation, because COVID's making them stay at home and they're doing everything from home, meaning they can play video games but their camera off and audio off all day. I pray for that generation. Some have applied themselves and they are very smart because they have things that we didn't have back in the day, where most of the time is access to computers and things like that, things that they don't understand. They can just look up and find another way. They have references that they can fall back on, etc., sitting in front of them. As well as you're not all sitting in a room, so if you've got a back seat and you're afraid to speak up because you can't see the board or something like that, or somebody's head's in the way, and you just kind of sit there frustrated all day, not learning anything, it gets rid of that. There's no other distractions. There's no class clown that does stupid things, that holds up class. There's no issues like that. It gets rid of all the menial things, but it also gets rid of the socialization aspect. Because I doubt that the teachers just open up class and are like, oh yeah, guys, all of you can speak, just sit and chat amongst yourself the last 30 minutes of class or something like that, or you have free time. No, they probably just let them go early. They don't try to force any type of socialization, and if they do, good on them. At least you're making them talk to other classmates that are essentially near them, since they're going to the same school, you'd figure. Some people do go hours to get to school, but essentially they're usually near them. You can make those conversations and talk to each other and things like that as someone that's fairly nearby. As opposed to just dismissing class early and letting them play a video game or something like that. I used to love video games, but I mean, I guess I did learn a lot of things from video games, but just like everything else that isn't school related, they're fucking useless. Excess socialization is fucking useless. Video games, fucking useless. Hell, grades 1 through 10 are essentially goddamn useless. They can be taught quicker. They can be taught faster. Most cases, most students are actually more advanced in the grade that they're actually in because they don't teach much throughout the school year. They take the specific subjects and they draw them out when they can be taught, if not half the time. There's a reason why you have smarter countries, because they jam all of that together and they actually teach them advanced things by the time they graduate. Ours sticks with a very loose school curriculum, Jesus Christ, in America, where they teach essentially the same thing every year. Very bad schooling system, very bad jail system, very bad everything. I mean, our country from base was at fault. And we still haven't sussed out and built a strong foundation. Even though we claim to have a strong foundation, we actually don't. But I'm not going to go into that because people that are hardcore America, yeah, that really don't understand history and don't look up things like that, aren't ever going to understand. They're just going to get defensive, but they're not going to understand what they're getting defensive for. And none of these comments or anything like that are really relevant to the discussion right now, so we'll go to the next. Which this would leave the cultists, the Krasu, the groundskeeper, and then I'm back to the content that I used to do. So I did a lot of content and very short amount of time, around 3 hours. It's not bad. Generally, I'll get through like 2 concepts, like a slight little bit of everything, and it'll take like 5 hours because I go into extensive detail. This time I just kind of cut a little bit short, cut things out that I wanted to say that I'm not actually going to say. And I'm not caught back up, but I'm caught back up to the point to where I was trying to catch back up. So I'm not 2 steps behind anymore. I'm back to only being 1 step behind, and I'm fine with that. Um, I actually don't even feel like playing any games right now. I feel like just relaxing, watching some YouTube videos, maybe a movie or something. So I think I'm going to end stream here. Even though next time I do decide to play a game, I'm going to be absolutely terrible at playing it because I haven't really played in quite some time now. It's already 4 o'clock, which is still generally longer than what I had planned on doing. I still have to actually get my actual job done. And, yeah. I can just do it in the morning. I'll just have to work a little bit into the morning and then start tomorrow off. Tomorrow's stream might start a little bit later on in the day if I can't finish everything. That's fine, no harm, no foul. Like I said, I want to get used to pushing out content and commenting and things like that. And interacting. I would love to get my second monitor working, but what I think I'm going to do is, if this lets me, shrink this. Nope, I can't shrink this. Can I shrink it this way? Well, that's unfortunate. Well, what I was going to do is from now on just shrink all of this over to the side and just expand it out whenever I'm doing sound tests and things of the like. Speaking of, cool. Yeah, I was just gonna shrink this in and bring it all the way to where only chat's showing. And then sit it to the side or some other place, maybe extend it up to there to have just a little small square showing that I could view chat as I'm going over some of these live, since my second screen doesn't want to work. I had it all thought through today too, because I was going to find a way to make this program always stay on top, which I think I have an option to, and just have it always stay on top and sit in the corner. In the rare time I have to move it, it's just as simple as, and then going on, and then moving it back afterwards. It's not that big of a deal. It's unfortunate. Windows 11 has caused my computer a lot of issues. At this point, I don't recommend updating to Windows 11 at all, regardless. Not until it flushes itself out more. I have ran into issue after issue after issue. And, yeah, not too happy about it. Nobody picked up my original concept idea. What I wanted to do was create sort of a pseudo challenge to have people throw out just random ideas that were in their heads. And I created a post. It wasn't that long ago. Did my post get taken down? Yeah, my discussions. Yeah, here. I had a fun killer design where I wanted people to give me random perks ideas and things like that, and I was going to incorporate them into a killer. Nobody bit, unfortunately, and gave me any type of feedback, even though six peoples came in and read. Like, the whole point of the challenge was for me to take random, weird ideas and then incorporate them back in. I also said, feel free to take this idea and use it as your own. And that I just essentially thought of this as I woke up. I think it would have been nice if I would have gotten, I wanted, essentially, I was shooting for like 20 different comments, some memes, some serious, something like that. And then I could take it, reincorporate all of their ideas, and then throw them in and try to make something usable out of it. And then see what everybody thought about it. Then I was going to big brain, take the solutions and everything that everybody says and incorporate them in a way that they were different, but still could fit into the game without infringing upon any other perk or anything like that. And then I was also going to use this as a reference as to where you can take different ideas and things like that are similar and essentially take them apart and make it something completely different without having to use the exact terminology and things like that. And we are at 3:14. That is a very good stopping point for all of this. I appreciate anybody stopping by. Have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, etc. Or just a good day in general. What is today, by the way? Saturday? Wonderful. Weekend, baby. You guys know the drill. Supplement